So in this lesson, we're going to be discussing upper structures, which are a really nice sounding voicing and a really simple way to play and voice altered dominant chords. Now, essentially all they are is a triad over a tritone. So the left hand always plays the third and the seventh of a dominant chord, which is always a tritone apart, and the right hand plays some kind of triad. And which triad you play is indicated by the number of the upper structure, where 1 is the root note of the chord. So for example, if we were to play a C7 upper structure 2, our left hand would play the third and the seventh, the E and the B flat, and our right hand would play the second degree triad from the point of view of the C7, so that would be 1, 2. It would play a D triad. Or for example, a C7 upper structure flat 3 would mean, again, the left hand plays the third and the seventh, and then the right hand plays the flat 3 triad. So 1, 2, 3, flat 3. And again, a C7 upper structure 1 minor means that the left hand again plays the third and the seventh, and the right hand plays the 1 minor. And so on. Now you can play any inversion of that triad, but you generally want to keep your left and your right hand relatively close together, around about an interval of a fourth apart, and certainly not more than an octave apart. So for example, if you were playing a C7 upper structure flat 5, your left hand would play the third and the seventh again, and your right hand would play the triad from the flat 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, flat 5, so a G flat major. However, note that the gap between your left hand and your right hand is relatively big. So what you can do instead is change the inversion of the triad by moving this D flat down here. Or alternately, you can change the inversion of your left hand, so moving the E up here. Now, if you have a look up here in the picture-in-picture, you'll see all of the possible upper structures that exist. Now, I'm not going to go through all of them because they're all quite repetitive and you'll sort of get the general idea and be able to apply them yourself. But essentially, every single upper structure is some kind of altered dominant chord, and I've written what altered dominant chord it is up here in the picture-in-picture. Like for example, an upper structure 2 is a dominant 7 sharp 11 chord, and an upper structure flat 3 is a dominant sharp 9 chord. And this is what makes them easier to play and to think about, at least in my opinion. They kind of act like slash chords, which I'll cover in a separate video. But so instead of thinking about, oh, I have to play a C7 flat 9 sharp 11, and then think about, oh, what kind of voicing can I give that chord to make it sound nice, you can just play an upper structure sharp 4 minor. And you've automatically got a nicely voiced chord that is a C7 flat 9 sharp 11. Flat 9 sharp 11. Now, most of you probably already know about tritone substitutions. If you don't, I've got a separate video on chord substitutions. But essentially, the reason they work is because the guide tones of each chord in the tritone substitution, that is the third and the seventh, are the same. So the C7 has the E and the B flat, and then the F sharp 7 has the B flat and the E. Now notice that the upper structures I've written out here don't have a root in the bass. Instead they have the guide tones in the bass, that is the third and the seventh. This means that every single upper structure is also its own tritone substitution, that is, it's also a dominant chord a tritone away. So every single C7 upper structure is some kind of F sharp 7 chord. Sometimes it's an F sharp 7 upper structure, so there's a bit of sort of symmetry there, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just a F7 chord that's not any kind of upper structure. Like for example, the upper structure flat 5 is just a regular F sharp 7 chord. So we've got the F sharp, the A sharp repeated, the C sharp, and then the E. So that's just a regular F sharp 7 chord. It's not an F sharp 7 upper structure. So that means to make this upper structure either a C7 or an F sharp 7 chord, you just have to add the root to the bass. Or if you've got a bass player, the bass player can do that. So for example, if I put a C down the bottom, it becomes an altered C7 chord. Whereas if I put an F sharp down the bottom, it becomes an F sharp 7 chord. So in this sense, upper structures are a little bit ambiguous in that they are both a dominant chord and its own tritone substitution. Now, one thing I need to point out is that the last row in this picture-in-picture is a C7 sus chord, which I've labeled as an upper structure flat 7 chord. Now, that's technically not correct because upper structures have the 3rd and the 7th in the bass, whereas we're playing a sus chord, so we don't want the 3rd, certainly not in the bass, possibly not at all in the chord. So instead you generally play the root and the 5th in your left hand for this particular chord, and then the B flat major triad in your right hand. But I've just put it here because it's a convenient way to think about the sus chord, and it sort of fits in nicely when discussing upper structures. Now, the other thing you need to be wary of when playing upper structures is doubling notes. Generally, when you're voicing chords, you want to avoid doubling up on notes. Like for example, the upper structure flat 5 that I was playing has the B flat twice. Now that kind of skews the sound of the chord towards the B flat and just doesn't make it sound as strong as it could. And it's generally just a rule that you want to generally avoid doubling notes in chord voicings. But what you can do is either completely omit the doubled note, or it's actually okay to have a doubled note if it's the highest note in your voice, because then it's sort of like the melody note. So you can voice it like that with the double note as long as one of them is at the top. Alternately, instead of just getting rid of this note, you can get rid of this doubled B flat and play the C or the root in its place if you like. But again, that's up to you. You can sort of play around with that and see what you think sounds nice and good. So all upper structures are dominant chords, but some upper structures resolve better to the tonic than others. In particular, the flat 5, flat 6 and 6 resolve really well to the tonic, whereas other upper structures feel like they sort of have a tonic feel and they don't resolve down to the tonic as well. And they're the upper structures that have either a sharp 9, a sharp 11 or just a regular 11, which is a sus chord. And the reason is the sharp 9 and the sharp 11 give the dominant chord a really bluesy feel because they are the blue notes in the blues scale. And so they don't resolve as nicely down to a tonic. They kind of feel like they already are the tonic. It feels like you're playing a blues, and the blues is of course using dominant chords almost exclusively. And so that covers your upper structure flat 3, 1 minor, 2 and 7, which is a sus chord, and sus chords sort of float there as well. They don't feel like they need to resolve anyway. But anyway, you can play around with all of these upper structures and see what you think and resolve them and don't resolve them and sort of decide what you think sounds pleasant and nice yourself. Now, if you've been through my previous lessons on chord voicings, you would have seen my quartal and so what chord voicing lessons. Now, combining these three voicings, the quartal, so what, and the upper structure voicings, gives you a really smooth and a very modern piano sound, and they're used quite a lot in sort of modern jazz. Like, for example, listen to these 2-5-1s that I'm going to play, where the G7 is going to be some kind of upper structure. Right, that was an upper structure 6. That was an upper structure flat 6. That was an upper structure 2. That that was an upper structure flat 5. So hopefully you can hear that they sound really smooth, really pleasant, they flow into one another quite well, and there are reasons for that. There are certain rules that you need to follow to make sort of the chord transition sound smoothly when you're either playing or comping or whatever, and I'll go through those rules in the final lesson of this video series. And I'll finish this lesson by inserting an upper structure into a song so you can sort of see what it sounds like in practice. But the good thing is, because there are so many upper structures and there are 3 inversions of each upper structure, you can put almost any note on top as your sort of melody note. So that gives you a wide variety of chords to choose from when playing a dominant chord, or when playing a song that has a dominant chord in it. So what I did there was essentially there's a 2-5-1 at the end of section B of All of Me that goes D minor 7, G7 to C major 7, and the melody goes A, B, C. So I played the So What chord voicing for the D minor 7, then a upper structure 6 for the G7, and then just a quartal chord voicing to get to the C major, and then continued. Cool, so I think that sounds rather nice and rather jazzy, and hopefully you do too. So have a go trying to combine So What quartal and upper structure voicings, because putting all of them together, like I said, makes them run really smoothly, really nice, and gives you a really sort of jazzy, modern sound. And like I said in the last video of this series, I'll give you a couple of rules and a couple of tips about how to combine the different chord voicings to make them sort of all blend together nice and smoothly, whether you're comping or doing a solo piece. So yeah, look forward to that. Otherwise, again, thanks for watching, and feel free to leave any questions or comments. See ya!